Hey guys, today I had a little idea for some fan art. I wanted to draw the cover of one of my favorite childhood books, Captain Underpants. I feel like so much fan art gets made of video games and the pixel art world, and I thought it would be fun to kind of dig into another part of my childhood whenever it comes to inspiration. But as a kid, I wasn't the biggest reader, but Captain Underpants definitely was one of the books that grabbed my attention as a kid. I've talked about this in past videos, but usually anything that has a good cover was enough to pull me in. So that's where we ended up. And we ended up here years later, an adult drawing a children's book, but the book was good. The book was good, I have to say. So the subsequent books also had great cover art. I spent hours drawing the one with the toilets on the cover. That sounds weird. I spent hours with the one drawing the lunch ladies from outer space. I honestly can't remember the titles of them at the moment, but I'll throw the images on the screen while I talk just so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm trying to recall the first time I ever saw these books. I can't really remember the first time I encountered them. It probably was something like the Scholastic Book Fair, or a teacher gave it to me or something. But I can remember spending my allowance money on them at Kmart back in the early 2000s when I was like 7 or 8 years old. They honestly might be some of the first things I actually spent my money on outside of just things like VHS tapes, or I don't know what else I would have spent my money on as a 7-year-old. But I think that it was this book, or that there was a plot line with like random jokes and pranks. It had a section, and the two main characters, I can remember them putting ketchup packets under the toilet seat for the principal to sit on. The principal is the guy who turns into Captain Underpants, but whenever they sit on the ketchup packets, it like gets ketchup in his underwear. At the time, I thought this was particularly clever, and I still kind of think it is. I haven't really seen that anywhere else. Let me know if you've ever heard of that prank outside of this book. Actually, let's go over to the internet right now. Let's just like look and see if that has any traction on the internet. Okay, we're looking. I'm gonna type in ketchup under the toilet seat. Pray for me so that I don't end up with anything strange. Okay, so look like the first post is it's like a Reddit thing. It says r/funny, and it has 770 plus comments 7 years ago. I'm seeing some pictures, just like image search with ketchup under the toilet seats. I'm seeing a TikTok feed that has 189 million views. So I guess I just haven't been looking hard enough. I guess. Okay, now I'm seeing some stuff that's like the actual Captain Underpants image that I remember. It says that they're called squishies. Okay, I'd say that I hadn't heard it before now, but for some reason that's one of the things that has stuck with me all these years later. I had never actually tried it, but I guess it has had inspired others to try it out if there's 189 million views on TikTok. But it's weird that that's the thing that stuck in my head the most. But outside of stuff like that, like thinking about reading just in general, because we're talking about reading a book and drawing a book that I read when I was a kid, I really don't think that I was that much of a reader. I'm still not that much of a reader. I mean, I can read. I probably read more than I'm remembering. Let's think. Books that stood out to me from school over the years, outside of these books, would be things like Holes, which I feel like every kid read then, or maybe even still does. I'm not sure. Something like Beowulf. I don't think that Beowulf was particularly inspiring. It just was something that stood out to me because it was so different from the others. There was a book that was about the Vietnam War that I remember called The Things They Carried. I remember there's a really gruesome scene in that stood out in my head. Things like The Scarlet Letter, which is a pretty famous book, and then a book called The Awakening, The Kite Runner, Edgar Allan Poe. So you can see I'm kind of struggling to come up with books here, but it's kind of sad that that's all I can think of off the top of my head. I don't think that's because I didn't read a lot, because I'm pretty good at reading. I feel like I'm pretty good at writing. Also, I haven't really read that much in the last 8 to 9 years either. In part, I think that's mostly because college kind of burnt that desire out of me. And I'm blaming it on college. I could start reading at any time, I guess. But that's just what I'm going to push it on to guess. And I think that's in part mostly due with the fact that we were like reading full textbooks in just like handfuls of weeks, and the subjects weren't always the most interesting things. They were just kind of things that we had to read. I also think that since my free time as an adult is pretty limited, I usually find myself diving into a drawing or art making of some kind, even outside of pixel art. I'd like to start reading again though. I think that it's a really great place to get ideas. I think that looking at images is cool to be inspired by, but I think that if I personally look at too much art, I can see and feel my creativity kind of being drained in favor of making things that look too much like the things that I like. I feel like I look at somebody's work and I say, okay, well, that composition is really cool, or that character is really cool, or those colors are really interesting. And then if I start to make something, I feel like I'm trying to tie it too close to the things that they would make. And I say that, and here I am just redrawing verbatim somebody else's drawing that was on a cover of a book that I read that they had written. So I guess that I'm kind of just being hypocritical here. I don't know if the hypocritical is the right word. I am just doing the opposite of what I'm saying that I should do or could do or would do. I just think that it's nice to touch base with a lot of stuff that you appreciated whenever you were a kid, and I think that's one of the reasons why I'm so into pixel art is just because it lets me revisit a lot of those moments and time periods in my life whenever I was really little, or maybe I was just younger than 10 years old, or maybe even in my early teen years, just because it lets me connect with those things a bit more in a different aspect. But at this point, I'm just rambling about, well, I don't know what. So let's just try to course correct it back to the actual piece itself. At this point, I started the animation. I animated his cape blowing. This animation's pretty short for the kind of animations that I generally make. I think in the end, it just becomes a 6 frame animation, which is not very long, but it was enough to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish with this piece. I just wanted it to be the cover of the book with a little bit of extra life added to it, and for it to be in pixel art. I'm cutting out the parts where I spend a lot of time just flipping back and forth between frames in favor of you guys not having to watch or endure that. Really, it's just me trying to figure out what works best. But you can see like a little screen off to the side, it kind of shows my little progress along the way. I had animated fabric waving in the wind before, but it was a flag and it was from a side view. So I kind of translated what I knew about that to the actual cape itself. And then whenever it comes to the kids dangling off the building, just kind of trying to think of a way that I could animate them to make it look like they were just hanging on for dear life. But I noticed in the actual drawing itself, they're kind of like being blown in the wind. Obviously, because his cape is blowing, but they're falling off the building trying to get to him, so it felt a little awkward to try to animate that. So I just animated it as if like this kid's here's hair is kind of like blowing in the wind, similar to how that cape is blowing in the wind as well. So it's kind of just fun to do a simple animation. I do think that stuff like this, where it's little animations and not super involved, is a lot of fun just to kind of do along the way. It's easy to get bogged down in all the details and want to do something more dramatic and get yourself burnt out on that. But you can see now that I'm adding these like little other elements that were kind of like along the side. I am not making this text readable because I don't think it's necessarily that important that it's that readable. It's just something that is there. So we're getting towards the end of the process here. Let's just jump to the final animation here in just a second, and that way you guys can look at that and kind of see how everything played out. Alright, so and there you have it, the final animation with everything all set up, all little elements being animated, adding a little bit extra life to it. Like I said, I wanted to add those little moments where it has like the Scholastic logo in the corner, or it has a kind of readable version of the author's name, or like I said, the little text inside those yellow wham shapes, for lack of a better term, or even like the animation inside the actual lettering of the title itself. Just something to add some spice to it. But as always, if you guys liked the video, make sure to like it. If you're still here, thanks for sticking around and watching that long. If you like the channel, make sure to subscribe to it. It just lets me know that you guys are interested in maybe seeing more videos moving forward. But other than that, I'm out of here. Bye.